Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight for our second informational session regarding our proposed attendance zone modification. We want to thank everyone for taking time out tonight to listen in and to some of the new information that we're providing this evening. We also want to thank you for providing some of the feedback and questions after the last session as well. Tonight we'll focus mainly on answering some of those questions that we've received. And just want to remind everybody that our feedback forms that we do receive are shared with our demographers as well as our staff and school board. So thank you for taking time to fill those out and ask great questions. As we move forward with the presentation, I just wanted to remind you where you can continue to find updated information regarding the proposed attendance zones. If you'll go to our website, you'll find not only the last link to the last informational session, the first informational session that we shared, but as well you'll find the maps that have been proposed, the frequently asked questions, and opportunities to continue to provide feedback as we continue to work through this process and make a great decision for our school district and community. So as we move forward, guys, just wanted to remind you of a couple things, why we're in the setting that we're in of needing to look and adjust our attendance zones. And I shared with you last time a little bit about the growth here in Forney. And as you know, it is very fast, and we're continuing to receive new students and new families on a daily basis. And with that, we have the opportunity to open a few new schools next year. Jackson Middle School, Rhodes Intermediate School, and Griffin Elementary School at Devonshire will be open for the fall of 21. Also, we'll continue to look in the future and plan accordingly to two other schools that were approved to open in the fall of 22, which is a rebuilt Johnson Elementary School in the Overland Grove area, as well as a Willett Elementary School in Gateway. So those are coming soon. But this year, we're just focusing on 3 new schools. And so we will talk about why it is that we need to look at adjusting our attendance zones. When you open a new school, obviously you have a lot of new chairs that need to be filled by students. And so adjusting attendance zones allows us to take students that may have been in crowded or almost full campuses and begin to spread those out into our new campuses to ensure that we keep our campuses leveled out and efficiently utilized so that we can support the new growth, but also maintain a lower capacity for our current students and families. And ultimately, this just ensures that all students here in Forney are receiving a great education and a great share in a great school. So this is, in a fast growth school district, something that is very common. School districts such as Frisco and Prosper do this on an annual basis. And with the fast growth that Forney is receiving, we will probably continue to look at our attendance zones every year to see how we can better them for our kids and our families. So let's go ahead and get started. First off with our elementary boundary planning. And I've asked Dr. Judy Weber, our Chief Learning Officer, to share a little information and answer any questions that we received concerning our elementary boundaries. Judy?
Yes, Dr. Terry, we received very few questions. So we'll go ahead and look at the map, and you can see Griffin Elementary right there in Devonshire. And with this new addition of this school, it really only impacts our students that were currently zoned for Blackburn Elementary or Crosby Elementary. So you can see their zones in the 2 shades right below Griffin. So in addition, then in 2022, we'll open the 2 other new campuses, and then we'll need to modify our additional boundaries at that time.
Thanks, Judy. Really didn't get a lot of questions about the elementary zones. And I think a lot of that is a reminder that, if you're not in Crosby or Blackburn zone, this really doesn't affect you this year.
Not
correct?
at all, not
Great.
for elementary.
Great. Well, then let's go ahead and move on then to some of our secondary boundary questions, really 5th through 8th grade. And just a reminder, we are not adjusting our high school 9 through 12 zones this year. So Jackrabbits stay Jackrabbits and Falcons stay Falcons. So I will go ahead and jump into the first question that we received. And it was, why do we have to adjust boundaries? And I've kind of talked a little bit about that already, but just to remind you guys, we're opening new schools, and when we open these new schools, we have to take students that may be in projected full schools or almost full schools. So Brown and Warren and Smith and Ray are sitting at close to capacity numbers. They're pretty full right now. And so by opening a third intermediate and middle school, we'll take parts of each zone and move those into those schools to where it is a much lower student enrollment for each campus. So that's, I hope that kind of gives you some insight into why we're having to adjust the boundaries. You know, we got this question a lot as well, and I wanted just to remind you, I covered this a little bit in the first informational session if you want to hear more about the process, but why are we rezoning subdivisions? You know, we kind of, our demographers, Templeton Demographics, they take all of our information on growth, and they analyze where our schools are, and they listen to our board sets parameters for really how and the things that we want to focus on and prioritize. And you can see they look at things like optimizing the space that we have in our campuses to reduce overcrowding. They make sure and look out to the future and prepare for growth that's coming. And they also look at things like where the campuses are in relationship to the neighborhoods, as well as the paths, the roadways that you utilize to get to certain campuses. And then they take into account the natural boundaries, things like rivers or large roads, or even a greenway of some sort that really is a good separating point for identifying groups to go to certain attendance zones. So Templeton Demographics takes that information into play, and they give a proposal to the school district based on the information that they have. And then we are kind of now in the setting that we are now, which is taking feedback on that before we make some final decisions. So that is a little bit of the process. And we had another question related to this, so I'll kind of continue to expand on the process, and that is the decision determined already? And is there a vote? So the decision has not been determined. This is a draft plan. That is why we take a lot of feedback and share that with them, and they come back with additional proposals and possible adjustments before our school board actually takes the final vote on modifying the attendance zones. So as you can see, and I covered this in the first informational session as well, if you have a chance to go back and review that, the process on the screen is the entire process. Take the current enrollments, analyze the future of projections. We then take a draft plan to our community. Our community provides feedback. The demographers adjust the plans if needed, and the board takes the final vote. And so right now, our current process would hopefully have an approved new plan by the end of this year. So that's kind of the answer to question 2 and 3. Altogether, we did receive a few questions on the process itself and how we identify these zones. So let's move on then to question 4. Would you consider allowing 7th graders to finish at their current school? And Rick Gear is our Chief of Human Services, and he deals with a lot of our transfers, Rick. So I'm going to let you answer this question for our community.
Thank you, Dr. Terry. Yeah, the district will continue to consider transfer requests as we have for many years. We will open the transfer option early once the new attendance zones have been approved and the numbers for enrollment have been determined. And Forney ISD has a transfer policy that's found in board policy FDB Local. And I believe you can see the letters on the screen there for your reference. I'd encourage you to get online and read that, and to get up-to-date information. But also, it's something to note is that special considerations are always reviewed once we go into some sort of attendance zone modification, that we'll review our current transfer process and make any adjustments, and as we evaluate that as well.
Thanks, Rick. That's just kind of the process of listening to the feedback, I think, as well, to determine where we end up with that, right? So question number 5, Rick, I'm going to let you answer this one as well about high school boundaries.
Yes, sir. And I think we addressed that in our first meeting, but also I think it's important for people to understand that students that are currently in 8th grade through our juniors at this time, there will be no impact to the high school boundary whatsoever. And I think there's a map that shows you what our current high school zones are from north and south side. It was adjusted a couple of years ago to move that up to Ridgecrest and 740, then down to 460. But there will be no change in our high school boundary for the coming year. Great,
Rick. I appreciate you clarifying that again. And you can find our attendance zones again on our website if you have questions and want to take a look at our high school zone. Question number 6, will this boundary be in place? So once the adoption has taken place and there is an adjustment to the boundaries, will that maintain? Well, if I have a younger child, let's say a kindergartner, and as they grow up, will the boundary be the same when they're in 5th grade or 6th grade? And that's to refer back to our fast growth. Attendance boundaries are something that we analyze and take a look at every single year. So this is something we'll do on an annual basis when you're in a fast growth school district. Our goal is always to move the fewest kids and families and interrupt them as possible while still maintaining good, efficient capacities at each of our schools. So we'll do this on an annual basis and take a look at this with the goal of trying not to interrupt feeder pattern if at all possible. Question number 7. Why did an adjacent neighborhood not get rezoned? Okay, so if you're in an impacted area and the neighborhood right next to you was impacted or not impacted by a change, why is it that you were selected and they weren't, right? So let me see if I can kind of answer this question. And it really boils down to that we're trying to equalize the capacities the demographers look at to balance out the capacities between the schools. So if we don't have to impact and move an additional neighborhood to do that, obviously we don't want to impact and move an additional neighborhood. So all of those parameters that I shared earlier about taking a look at roadways and proximity and capacities at each campus, that's all taken into effect, but there's got to be a line at some point that's drawn or proposed by our demographers, and they choose those once they hit that efficiency level to where they're not having to impact additional students. So I hope that helps to answer that question a little bit. I know that it's always a question as to why this neighborhood and not this neighborhood, and that's kind of the driving factor behind it. Question number 8, why are students being sent from the south of 80 to north of 80 if it's already a very fast growing area? And the north side is a very fast growing area, but we are also putting a second school on the north side of town right now. So over at Jackson and Rhodes, over in the 740 area, 740 and Pinson Road, that intersection there, is the new location of Jackson and Rhodes. And so where we used to have one Brown and one Smith, and one Warren and one Ray, our district was really divided into 2 segments. But when we open a third one, then obviously you can see there's a need to divide our school district and from an attendance boundary standpoint into thirds. And that's why we're having to kind of break this up. And so, as you know, the faster we grow, the more schools that we will need to open to accommodate for that. So it could be that in the future, there's additional schools also added south of 80 or even south of 20 one day. So that is hopefully the answer to this question. I hope I did a good job of answering that for you guys. Question number 9, Dr. Weber, I'm going to hand this over to you, Judy, to kind of talk again about our special programs. And I know you had a chance to talk about this in the last session as well, right?
That's right, Dr. Terry. We have quite a few students who attend various special programs throughout the district. And in a fast growth district. Each year, we need to evaluate participation and location of these programs. We do our best to keep things in the same location, make it consistent for our students. But once we have final locations determined, families would be contacted and then they're notified that, say, a specific program had to change. So we have solicited some feedback for some steering committees to help us with a few programs. And then our special education programs, they really look at space and utilization, and those families are contacted if and when we make any changes.
Great, thanks, Judy. And our goal always is to try and keep those programs as consistent and as possible, just like our attendance zones.
Always.
Yeah. So more interest to come. Once the attendance zones are set, the programs will be evaluated, and we'll communicate that out as they any changes that may occur need to happen. So I think really that's all the questions that we have received. Some of you may have asked individual questions and had answers responded to you on an individual basis. But if we had a larger question, all of these will end up in a frequently asked question area. And our communication team will keep that updated on our website. And so as we go through this process, if you do have questions, we encourage you to go to forneyisd.net/attendance zones, and you'll find all of this information and more as we continue to work through this process. Last, just wanted to remind you guys that your voice does matter, and we appreciate, again, many of you have taken time to provide feedback. And you know, some of it was, hey, this looks great. And some of it is, you know, could you do this? Could you look at this? I have a question about, and we, all of those things are welcomed, and our board appreciates your submission of feedback. And so continue to encourage you, if you do have questions or feedback, to share that with us. And you can find that link on our website. So thank you guys again for taking time to join us tonight. This wasn't as long by any means, but I know you're busy, and we appreciate you trying to get information to share with others as well as your family. I just want to say thank you again for the grace that you're providing as we do experience our modifications of our attendance zones. But I can assure you again that our school board will make the best decision for all of our 13,000 kids that we have in this school district today, as well as you know, the 7,000 that we're going to welcome to our Forney family over the next few years, as well as we encroach on that 20,000 student mark. So thank you again for your grace and your patience. We hope you have a great evening.